Hello everyone, welcome to something a little bit different for the channel. Our first proper film review. So what better way to start than by reviewing possibly one of the worst films I've ever seen. we all watched Wonder Woman 84 recently, and I don't really know where to start with this, guys, because there's so much wrong with this film, and it almost hits that level where I enjoyed it because it's so bad. Yeah, where to begin, honestly? Like, first of all, right, why the hell is this film set in the 80s? It doesn't make any sense.
I remember thinking this when they announced it was the 80s. Like, they've done, her in World War One. They've done her in the past. Then they had her in Justice League in the modern day. Why are we still dicking about in the past with this?
1984.
It's because the 80s is the in thing, isn't it? Stranger Things and...
Is it?
Yeah, I was going to say...
Is it?
Basically, they've written this script in 2016 when the 80s was already on its way out as the in thing, and then they've gone ahead and filmed it anyway. And it's like, but no one cares about the 80s anymore. My favourite thing about the version of the 80s that it's set in is it's like the most cartoony, perfect version of the 80s that I think I've ever seen. Like, even Stranger Things doesn't get that cartoony 80s of everyone walking around in like leotards and roller skates and...
You are watching a comic book film here. Let's just remember that.
I know, but
let's remember the Super Friends. I think that's where some of this is coming from.
Everything else in the DC cinematic universe has tried to separate itself from Marvel by being less comic booky and more serious, and with maybe the exception of Shazam. And then this film sort of comes back and tries to do both. It tries to be cartoony, but not.
It was just like a really unconvincing portrayal. I kept on being taken out of the film because I kept on being reminded that this is just a bunch of people dressed up to look like they're in the 80s on sets that I've created to look like they're in the 80s, and it's like a version of the 80s that just didn't exist. And it's like, maybe it's because I'm just so over this whole 1980s nostalgia thing as well. It's like, just move on, let's move on from the 80s now. They weren't that good.
Where were the shoulder pads? Where was the big hair? Where was Michael Jackson's
Kristen Wiig had some
music?
pretty big hair. I'll go on record now. I think this film is fine.
Oh, James.
I don't know. I went in. I just want to see some bright colours, some decent characters, just for a bit of fun. And,
but the fact is, none of the characters were decent. Everyone was awful. Everyone in that film was
a stretch.
terrible.
Come on now.
Right, okay, so story-wise, this film was garbage. There's
not a great story.
The story, it failed on a storytelling standpoint on so many different levels, and then the characters were just crap, just bad. The main villain, first of all, where do I start with this, right? The whole setup for this film is that someone discovers a magic stone which grants everyone's wishes. Pedro Pascal realizes that he can become massively successful and gain the love of his son by stealing this stone, right? And this stone is like the MacGuffin, basically.
I think it's consistent in that it works like a monkey paw, but I'm not sure how the stone chooses what is most valuable to you.
Pedro Pascal's wish, and this made me laugh, once he finally did get the stone, his wish was to become the stone.
Yeah, because then he gets unlimited wishes.
Yeah, but that's
in a way with a loophole.
But that's ridiculous. Just wish for unlimited wishes. Within the eternal.
Then you're going to have unlimited consequences and prices.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, which definitely
he does only get one consequence.
Yeah.
I mean, the rest of the world nearly annihilates itself, but he only gets one consequence, which is deteriorating health, which he can just leech from other people because he's the stone.
Wonder Woman's wish was to bring back her dead boyfriend from the original film, because she wants nothing more than a boyfriend. That's her one wish. Just bring back the boyfriend. Wonder Woman, for God's sake. That's all she wants is her boyfriend. Like, she's been kicking around for what? Like, when was the first film start?
First World
War One.
So 60 years. She's been kicking around for 60 years, right? That makes it even more insane that when the boyfriend does come back in someone else's body's just been hijacked.
Oh, yeah.
And the way that they do that is just bizarre, where it's like, it's still him. Like, everyone else sees this guy's face.
But she sees
Chris
his
Pine.
face.
But, like, it makes it even more insane that, like, when he gets in a jet, he knows exactly how to fly the jet. If all he's been trained in is World War One aircraft, basically planes were just invented, and suddenly he knows how to fly a jet. Like, it's so dumb. It's ridiculous.
I'll get out the way my positives. Despite dodgy writing, Gal Gadot and Pedro Pascal, I thought, put on great performances.
I enjoyed Chris Pine as well.
I didn't think Gal Gadot was any good.
I wasn't that convinced, man.
I would have liked even more focus on Pedro Pascal and just get rid of Kristen Wiig's character, because she did not affect the plot in the slightest. Like,
but you need someone to fight.
Why though?
That's why
it was a terrible fight sequence. It was the
poor.
worst part of the film.
It was truly
Where did she
awful.
get the gold armor from, by the way? Like,
It was in a
Just when she
room.
first came to Earth.
yeah, but when it was, did it just appear?
It was hung up in her room in a bag.
No, there's a split scene where she literally goes into her flat, unwraps the armor, and then it cuts to her flying in the armor.
Oh, right.
There's like a split scene where it implies that she changes.
That armor,
Right, okay,
if anyone's
brilliant.
seen Rick and Morty, that armor made me think of Bird Person.
Just to jump back to Kristen Wiig's character, I've seen a few people complain about it. There's one thing that I noticed that I don't think anyone else has mentioned, and it's the fact that her character has exactly the same plot and character arc as Jamie Foxx in The Amazing Spider-Man.
I thought this.
Yeah.
I really
It's
thought
literally
this.
It's literally the same arc.
It's done slightly better, but it is the same thing.
It's done ever so slightly better, but it's I'm a nerd, I'm awkward, no one wants to be my friend. Then I get superpowers. I realise that people like me, so I become a massive asshole until I'm reminded that I'm still the same nerd.
It's just I'm just like
It was
the dialogue to get her to being cheater is so
why-
poor as well. When she says like, "Oh, I want to be like nobody else. I want to be an apex predator."
Yeah.
It's just
Whereas he's
really
like-
poor writing.
Right, so
I want to be an apex predator.
Oh right, the reason she was a cheater is because that was some other like comic book character, right? Is that what
the
it
cheater
was?
Yes.
is one of
Yeah.
Wonder Woman's like big villains.
Big villains.
villains.
Jesus Christ, because that was like the dialogue in this film just in general is terrible, but that was like
It's very clunky.
just it's just bizarre.
Just from the beginning of this film, you have the 10-minute sequence at the beginning at the Olympics or whatever it is, which is all. I was surprised actually. It was all sort of very nicely CGI'd. Most of it looked great, and it was an entire cool 10-minute sequence that boiled down to "Don't tell lies," and then cuts from what is. I mean, it's still comic booky, but it cuts to the mall robbery, which is like the most Adam West Batman
I really enjoyed that scene.
cartoony stupid robbers
Really
I've
dull.
ever seen.
I loved it. It was fun. I think
but you
they
know it's
should
bad,
have, and the
James.
studio asked her to. Yeah, but it's fun. I thought that was a nice intro. It was nice. It was colourful. It just gets you in and gets
It
you
was-
started. The studio
did-
wanted to cut the Themyscira scene, and Patty Jenkins straight up refused. She was like, "No, I want this scene in. Absolutely should have gone. Get rid of it.
Yeah,
Have the mall scene be the opening scene." And it's. I think you've shaved 10 minutes off your 2.5-hour solo film, and you've
I
got
mean,
a much
if
stronger
you
opening.
cut Kristen Wiig out, you can cut like an hour and a half out of it. It's just a nice little hour film.
But it's strange how like I just thought the tie-in for it being like tell the truth, it was just I thought even that was quite weak. I thought it would have been
Yeah, and then-
it would have been better to have done like your opening be like Diana doesn't have a big, not an action sequence. She maybe she tells a lie, a white lie, then she sat down and it's dialogue. Or you have the opening sequence be the origin of the gold suit, something like that.
I think they needed it to be I think they needed that opening sequence to be an action scene, because after the mall robbery, it's like a solid hour of no action or talk.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
It was Tenet all over again. I was like, oh my God, would someone please do something?
You could hear this film.
With that opening scene
At
as
least
well,
you could hear it.
Like, with that opening scene, in theory it was alright, it was a semi-decent kind of action scene, and it would have worked way better if they'd have called back to it, because obviously, like, Wonder Woman had this internal struggle throughout, and it was, the whole point of that scene was to remind her of who, what it is to be good and don't lie, and what it is to be, what it is to be Wonder Woman, basically. So call back to it, like, have her remembering it, so it at least makes a bit of sense within the actual story, rather than just being a weird opening sequence. Like, another thing that just didn't work. But yeah, you're right, Christian. The first hour and a half of this film was just, what was it exactly?
I mean, it was, because you had like all of the interactions between Kristen Wiig and Gal Gadot, and those were all weirdly written and paced, and they just seemed to like teleport from location to location to continue the conversation. And then Chris Pine comes back into it, and we get half an hour of possibly the worst quote-unquote romantic dialogue I've heard in a long time. It was basically like, from that point on, it was like a rom-com with a superhero film wrapped round it. It wasn't a superhero film with a romantic storyline. It was a rom-com with a superhero storyline wrapped round it.
That scene, Christian, where Chris Pine starts dressing up as like people and puts on more and more ridiculous outfits, and it's like, what the hell is that? What is he doing? He's just been resurrected from the dead, and suddenly, like, he's just like, oh, the 80s is fun, isn't it? Remember, people used to dress like this, didn't they? Kind of felt like someone from 2020 going back to the 80s and going, remember this? Remember this? People dress weird, didn't they?
It did feel a bit like a scene where, even as they were writing and filming it, they were like, this is for the trailer more than it is for the film.
I thought it was a real shame. So Chris Pine, he's alive during the Great War, and he dies before it ends, and then he's resurrected in the 80s. I wish there was a scene where he asks Diana what happened, as in, he
doesn't care.
He doesn't seem to care.
That's a very good point.
About how the Great War, nothing happened, and then he doesn't even know. He doesn't know that there was a second World War.
Yeah. I was gonna say they do the whole like Captain America style man out of time thing, but the first thing that Captain America does is like figure out what happened with the war. Yeah. The first thing Chris Pine does, he's like, oh, escalator, coffee.
The whole way they do it.
Pop-Tarts.
The whole way they do it.
Shameless plug.
With the whole way they do it with Captain America is so much better. Where he has that list at the start of is it Civil War? Winter Soldier. Yeah, it's so much better, and it's like, here's a list of all the things you should need to catch up on. With Wonder Woman, with this film, it's like it's done so badly. It's like the sequence goes on so long for a start. It's like, at least it's about 15 minutes of just Chris Pine being like given a guided tour of 1984, and it's like it's so strange, because it's like the audience of 2020 is watching like a guy from World War One reacting to like the 1980s, and it's like, who asked for this? Like, it doesn't work.
You could have had a really nice poignant scene where we talked off camera super quick. We talked about like Doctor Who not being very good anymore. There's one good bit in a Capaldi episode where a soldier from the First World War, they accidentally slip to him that there's a second war, and he's like, what do you mean World War One that he's currently in? You could have had like some really nice poignant scenes with Chris Pine acknowledging that they won the Great War and there was a second one, and how terrible it really was. And they're in the middle of the Cold War with Russia. They're still in a war, and like they don't like. It's just such a shame. There's no depth
Yeah, why? Like he didn't ask once. Oh, why is there such tension between the United States and the Russia? Like, weren't we allied? I don't like quite understand. Like,
you can tell, right? You can tell that
what's a superpower?
Yeah, you can tell that whole man out of time thing is done poorly when you were like. The sequence in the first Austin Powers film is better, where he just sits down and watches all the DVDs to catch up on what he's missed.
When the nukes fire, and then they get eradicated, but I think people remember that happened. But then the Cold War continues on anyway because it's in our history. So even then, it's just like it gets very silly when you have Armageddon as your third act, and it's set in our history. It's just, I think it just gets so silly and so.
Well, this is the thing. It's like the whole idea that everyone on Earth was granted a wish, and then every single person renounced that wish. It's like, I don't buy it. Even I don't buy that.
All I was thinking when watching this film was I was just sat watching all of the action sequences and stuff that Wonder Woman was involved in and thinking, how was it a surprise when she showed up in Batman vs Superman? Like, surely there was at least a few people that knew.
Like, because when the first trailer came out, they showed how when she's in the mall, she's throwing a tiara boomerang around and breaking cameras. I was like, oh, that's a nice idea. So we're going to see why she's not been discovered until Batman vs Superman. Like, that's a cool element. I like that. Nothing else about it in the rest of the whole film.
So many stupid, like, plot holes and inconsistencies in the plot as well. It's like, why was there a plane that Chris Pine, by the way, had no problem flying, fully fueled in the museum, ready to go? Like, I don't understand. And then it's like, oh, but Wonder Woman has to make the plane invisible because radar will see the plane. But that's not how radar works. Radar doesn't work on sight.
Dan, it's magic.
I don't care. It needs to make sense.
It's not magic because it's a real
it's
jet.
It's just crap.
In a real.
It's
like
not,
the invisibility is magic.
They literally did the invisible jet so they can just be like, oh look, Wonder Woman had an invisible jet in the comics.
That's
boom,
why
there it is.
Right, did she?
To do Wonder Woman's invisible jet.
Right. I haven't watched I haven't read the Wonder Woman comics. Most people who watch this film don't know who Cheetah is, don't know who that Wonder Woman had an invisible jet, don't know anything about Wonder Woman lore, right? Some people will, right? But we're talking like big multi-million-dollar film here that needs to appeal to a broad market, right? Don't put weird shit like that in, like an invisible jet. Like, it doesn't make sense, right?
Or you set it up as as the opener when she's a kid, that she can make things invisible and she can't do it yet because she's a child. Yeah. It's so randomly
so
placed
weird
in that she can just do it, and it's a coffee cup, and it's just very strange.
And it never comes back. It's in one scene.
They just introduce it and then never talk about it again. Like, she's like, oh yeah, I did it once before with a coffee cup and I couldn't find it. Yeah. It's like, well, it would have been nice if we'd have seen that.
Well, maybe that's it. That's why the jet didn't come back, because they parked it and she lost that as well.
How did he land the jet? We didn't even see him land that jet. Right, it's like, then, right, we had that stupid scene with the fireworks, which was just so, like, dumb.
Why would he just turn and fly through the middle of them? It made no sense.
Like, it's the 4th of July. I forgot, of course. Right, okay, let's fly through the fireworks. And like Chris Pine's like, oh, I've never seen a firework before. Isn't this romantic? And like this whole firework sequence was completely insane. And then they fly to Cairo, right? Which is, I checked on Google Maps. All right, I checked.
This man's done his research.
It's a 10-hour flight, man. It's 10 hours. So in a modern day jet, that wasn't a modern day jet. One, right? Right. Secondly, like, are you telling me that jet was fully fueled for a transatlantic flight to Cairo?
I'm pretty sure that fighter jets like that wouldn't have enough fuel.
They don't have that much
at full capacity to make that flight.
They don't have that much. They burn through fuel like it's insane how much fuel they burn up. They don't have enough, right, to go half that distance. I might be wrong, right? But I'm pretty sure I'm not. Then how does he land the jet? He just lands it. He knows how to land a jet, even though he's only piloted a World War II aircraft, which is probably a biplane, right? And then
World War I aircraft, even older.
My final point, before I stop ranting, is why was that whole sequence even in Egypt? Why did they even go there?
The oil.
Doesn't make any sense. Why was that whole sequence even the oil? Oh, that the guy didn't even have, which was completely inconsequential. Why were they in Egypt? Like, what? I don't get it. It was a waste of about 45 minutes of. It didn't get the plot anywhere.
Oh, I didn't even.
I had not thought of that.
I didn't even clock the fact that he flew all the way over there for oil that he didn't even have. So all he got was a security detail from it that got him later trouble in the film.
It's insane. Oh, there's a problem with the jurisdiction of your security detail. What?
And in all of Egypt, that big country, they just drive along each other on the same road. It's the chances of that is.
We'll change topic after this. One more point. Another inconsistency I spotted. Right, Wonder Woman says to Chris Pine, even though it's a different guy, right? Oh, we can't get a plane because like an actual, real commercial plane because you don't have a passport. Like, yeah, Chris Pine doesn't have a passport, but the guy's body you possessed, he probably has a passport.
Oh yeah.
Like, look around his flat.
Just use his passport.
It's his face as well.
I was
going to say, that's the first thing I thought. She was like, oh, well, you don't have a passport. And it's like, how do you know? Just go into his apartment. He probably has one.
Like, yeah,
he's an engineer.
It's like, yeah, Chris Pine doesn't have a passport. He's not Chris Pine. He doesn't look like it's the guy. It makes a point of showing that it is the guy. He looks at himself in the mirror. Everyone else can see it's the guy. You are living this guy's life, and yet he doesn't have a passport. So we'll go and hijack a fully fueled jet and fly to Cairo.
God.
Another thing about Pedro Pascal, okay? Another quick thing. So his whole motivation is to make his son proud. I don't know if any son actually cares when they're 7 about being. Anyway, there's a scene where his son is touching Pedro. And he says, I wish to be like you or whatever. And Pedro goes like, oh, no. Yeah. I thought what was going to happen was it was all going to go on to the kid. And he was going to become this thing. And I thought Pedro Pascal, to get it away from the kid, was going to keep getting... It was going to escalate, that he was going to try and keep it away from his kid. So he's going to keep getting... I need to get more and more and more to get it away from my son. Which makes sense to escalate as to nuclear Armageddon, but that just doesn't happen. And I thought it would give Pedro a bit more motivation. I totally lost his motivation of why he was doing anything.
Yeah.
And then at the end, he's like, "Oh, I did it. I just want you to be proud of me." And he's like, "I'm a kid. I just want you to be my dad." And he's like, "Oh yeah."
Also, like, why was that kid just unsupervised, man? Like, didn't he have like a family? It wasn't just Pedro Pascal that was like sole guardian, right? He made a point of saying, "Oh, it's your weekend." So why was he just stumbling around this apocalyptic wasteland for the final third of the film?
Yeah. Also, I'm unsure on the passage of time over the film because, like, when you first properly introduced to Pedro Pascal, he walks into the office and it's like, "Oh, it's your weekend." And this kid runs up and he gives him a hug and stuff, and then literally, it seems to have been like 2 days pass, and then they're like, "Oh, it's your weekend," and it's like, how many weeks have passed? How long was he in Cairo for?
They should have just had him appear in Egypt, like the assistant just goes, "It's your weekend." Like, it's like, oh no! Oh. It was just wouldn't have surprised me.
Just as a TV studio at the end, it's like, "Oh, it's your weekend."
There's a bit as well. It was very Batman 60s logic. There's the bit where he's talking to the president. It might be Reagan, Ronald Reagan. Is it? I don't know who that's meant to be. The president in '84.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, there's the bit where
Reagan was. I think
they're like, yes, it's
just a president. You know.
There's the bit where they're talking about that the satellites in the sky, and he's like, "Oh yeah, the particles touch everything," and Pedro Pascal's like, "Oh, they touch everyone," and he's like,
"Yeah,
it's a figure of speech."
That was the final straw.
And they take it, and he takes it literally, and the film takes it literally.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's literally the '60s Batman, where in the '60s Robin will be like, this event took place at sea. It was Catwoman. It's like, that's the logic of the. Oh, it's just so shit.
Yeah.
How bad did that film, like when it was cutting around to everyone wishing across the world, how bad did that film make British people look when the one British woman's wish was to have all of the Irish people in the UK be sent back to where they came from?
What the hell was that?
Guys. As a country, they
because-
voted for Brexit. I think it's pretty damn accurate.
Yeah,
Is it because in the 80s there was tensions with the Irish, wasn't there? Because of the IRA and stuff.
IRA.
I think that's what it's just occurred to me. It must have been. But what a
Yeah.
strange thing.
It was
to
a
focus
weird
on.
thing to put in. It was a bit odd.
Honestly, you could go through this film and just pick holes in it all day because there's so much wrong with it.
Like even for, because superhero films often ask you to suspend your disbelief, and I can do that. But even for suspending your disbelief, this hit like all new levels.
Suspend your disbelief, but the film
Couple
needs to have
that
an internal logic and makes sense.
Yeah.
You can suspend your disbelief for Star Wars, but it all tracks and makes sense, and this just does not.
Yeah, couple that with the fact that it's it's goofy and over the top and comic booky at points, but then it just keeps switching back and forth between, oh, this is a fun comic book movie, look at how DC have changed, we're like Shazam now, and then it'll switch back to the Batman versus Superman, but we're going to be gritty and different than Marvel, but we're going to be fun and but we're going to be gritty, but we're going to be fun, and it's like, choose a tone, choose one tone, stick with it.
Or like maybe like Marvel, that's another thing Marvel does great. It juggles tones and it does it well. Like it fits like comedy, drama, and kind of everything in between. I guess you got sci-fi elements, you got fantasy elements, and it all works because they've got the characters right and they've got the storytelling right. With the DC films, again and again and again, it's like they're just reacting to Marvel. It's like they don't quite understand what makes the Marvel films good, and they're just doing the surface level stuff. So guys, should we do our final ratings then?
I guess so.
Go around the table and give the final ratings. So let's see. Ben.
It's just like really like just poor, and then it's like you can kind of watch it and it just like goes over you like a grim wave, and it's just like I don't know, like a 2.
A 2.
Like,
2 stars.
Maybe like a half star for lighting, except for the third act.
Yeah, but the third act was to hide the bad CGI.
Yeah,
they had bad lighting as well.
2.5.
Maybe 1.5.
1.5.
Fucking hell, it's just like so boring and nonsensical, and it's kind of like not even I didn't even find it fun, like a fun bad. I was just like sat there like, oh,
it was a chore.
It's just so long.
Yeah, 2.5 hours.
I'll give it a 2. I don't know. I can't really justify it.
Like I said at the opening, I think it has got its faults, but this film is fine. Like, it's okay. I go into these films wanting to like them. Like, superhero films are my kind of thing. Yeah, it's a solid like 3-star film. Like, it's fine. It's decent, and I enjoyed watching it enough.
He's giving it a 3.
I just thought I think I enjoyed watching it. Just don't analyse it. It just don't think about it too hard.
That's such like a shame. You shouldn't. That's like you shouldn't just allow the film to just get away with it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like you should hold it to a higher standard, and not, because if you keep this idea of just letting them getting away with it, they'll just keep making them, and you won't get a better, higher quality of film.
But we have a higher quality of film already.
James will watch them.
Yeah, I'll watch them.
It's like you shouldn't just allow films like this to just get away with it. Just think like Jesse in Breaking Bad, he can't keep getting away with it. It's like, oh, stop.
Christian, what would you like to give the film?
Well, after watching all 6 hours of it, and I didn't have the worst time I've ever had with a film. I didn't have a pleasant time either, though. I'm probably going to give it half of what I gave the original Wonder Woman, so it gets 1.5 stars for me.
1.5 stars. I just thought it was absolutely terrible. Probably one of the worst films I've seen in a while. Awful on several levels. Yeah, embarrassing, quite frankly. 5 stars. I'll give it a 1. I'll give it a 1 because I enjoyed how bad it was in places. Maybe it was even trying to deliberately be bad. I don't even know, but I would recommend watching this film, to be quite honest.
Oh, no way, no way.
Because it's just that kind of poor.
Yeah. I think there is some stuff in there, and there's the seed of something really good. I just think it needs a rewrite. I think it's a first draft of a script. It's a first draft of what could be a good film.
All right, guys. Well, I think we've picked apart that film quite enough now. I guess we all know each other's opinion on it. It was an interesting one for sure, wasn't it? Thanks for everyone for watching. Hope you've enjoyed the video and our ranting. So like and subscribe if you did like it, and you'll get updates on the channel and when we release anything new, which should be on Friday. I think we've got a new podcast out on Friday, so who knows what we're going to be talking about. I don't. But yeah, for now, thanks very much, and thank you guys. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.